Yo, welcome back to another edition of the Men Who Cry podcast. Make sure you like, subscribe, review, tell a friend, tell a friend, and tell a friend, and tell a friend, and tell a friend. If you don't do these things, I have to assume that you do not like actual NBA basketball. Wow. I am recording this after the New York Knickerbockers went into Boston down 20 points in the second half, came back, and are now leading their series 1-0 over the defending champs. We had a book. I had notes I was going to write down on how we were going to talk about this pod. We'll get to that in a sec. The Celtics actually, the last line I saw, this was ESPN bet. The Celtics were favored by minus 900. For those who don't know much about gambling, you basically have to bet $10 on the Knicks to you have to bet you have to bet $10 to win 90 cents. Yeah, I got that right. You have to win $10 to win 9 cents on the Celtics, essentially. That's how much of a favorite they were. You see lines like that for the 2 seed in the NCAA tournament versus the 15 seed, right? Like, that's how line is. And maybe, honestly, in college basketball now, you might not even get that kind of line. It was a win that this team needed so badly because they have been getting dog walked all the time. They can't beat the top teams, blah, blah, blah. The teams are ahead of them. They're not as good, yada, 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 yada. And it got to a point where I was like, all right, this isn't like the worst team in the league, okay? Like, we're getting to a point where it gets, a little disrespectful. But again, this is the media apparatus that we're in. One person has to take, and then every other person has to have 50 million takes to go along with it to make their take sound hottier than the take beforehand. This is going to be a series now. Absolutely. I do not think Boston's going to win the next 4 straight. I think these two teams will split the next 3 games. I think the next 4 games will be 2-2 after 4. And then we'll see. It'll be a best of 3 series after that point. But yes, want to win. What a game for it's just TNT. This is what you pay the big bucks for the NBA for, is to have games like that. That's going to go down as one of the best games of the year. Regular season, postseason, you're not going to find a game that's going to be as compelling as that one. And so this kind of leads into, the conversation we're going to have, which was round 2 coverage now, because all the round 1 games are now over. So we just spoke. We have Knicks up 1-0 on the Celtics. We have the Pacers up 1-0 on the Cavs in a series that, again, no one was giving the Pacers much of a chance, which I felt was a little odd. Not necessarily I think the Pacers are going to win. I still have Cleveland in 6 games. But from experience of last year watching this Pacers team, they play very much I would say a non-NBA style of basketball, or what most fans consider NBA style basketball, which is like, okay, you have your multiple stars, if you're 2 stars, whatever. Those guys will get you anywhere between 24, maybe 31, 32 points, depending on how your team structure is. And the other guys basically have to fill roles, whether it's defense, hit open threes, yada yada. The Pacers don't play that way. The Pacers basically get you in a conundrum. What I feel like is, once they get feet in the paint, it's kind of like the Celtics, where it's constant rotation and constant movement. The difference is that the Pacers don't shoot as many threes as Boston. No one shoots as many threes as Boston. But, and it's basically one guy, it's Halliburton, who's doing a lot of the movement. So I'm not surprised that the Pacers won game 1. I wouldn't be surprised if they win the series. I'm not picking them to win this series. Just because I think overall Cleveland's offense will continue to be good, and I think that they can slow down the Pacers enough, because what happens with the Pacers is they get that thing moving, and sometimes there's a crank in the system, and once they get that crank, they can go multiple possessions, just turning it over, bad shots, turning it over, bad shots, and then they can give up really, really long runs because they don't play as good a defense as other teams in the league. It's going to be interesting to see, I'm not a big legacy guy, but this is by far Donovan Mitchell's best chance to get to not only the conference finals for the first time, but the NBA finals. He has home court throughout the playoffs, even though they just lost it. right now in this series. And he, I would argue, has never had a team that's been this good. And it's going to be interesting because the old adage has always kind of still been there, is that your best player can't be, a point guard, essentially, for lack of better terms. And if they are, they essentially have to be a no doubt about it, I don't know, top 25 player of all time. It's probably where Isaiah Thomas is, and Steph Curry's probably in the top 10, maybe top 15 players of all time. And Donovan Mitchell isn't going to get that far ahead, even though I do think if his career continues this way, he'll make the Hall of Fame. But it's going to be interesting because, like, he does. Someone made the point where it's like when you watch Donovan Mitchell play, he has like 10% of Westbrook in him. And that's good and bad in the sense that he's willing to take the shots needed to be taken to win you games. However, when it's not going, it's still going up. And when it's up and it's stuck. And I'm curious to see how much this will actually impact him, because for Cleveland, you're not going to have a team as good as this, in my opinion. You have three All-Stars. You have two guys that are more than likely going to make All-NBA. You have the Coach of the Year, you have the Defensive Player of the Year. You have the best record in the league this year. You have home court throughout. There's no excuse for you not to get to, at worst, the conference finals. And it's going to be a interesting deciding play to see how the rest of the team kind of comes together, and if Jared Allen and Evan Mobley can stay switched out onto Tyrese Halliburton and all the other guards for the Pacers, because that's basically how they're playing it. What you're seeing now is someone online, I need to really start tagging these people, but there's this new kind of adage in the NBA, which I don't know if we're there yet. I can see it happening in the next couple of seasons, but basically you're only as good as your weakest defender, right? And you see it a lot of times is when you have guys or you have teams that have bad defenders, right? Jokic and Jamal Murray, those are two guys that aren't the best defensive players. Karl-Anthony Towns, Jalen Brunson aren't the best defensive players. Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, those guys aren't necessarily the best defenders, even though I don't think they're bad, they're just small. But the issue is, or what someone was making the point is, like, it's so hard to do the things because there's so much skill now on the court. Basically, if you can't dribble, pass, and shoot, do all three of those things, you can only play maybe, if you're not 7 feet tall, you can't play at all. If you are 7 feet tall, you can probably only play anywhere between 18 and 25 minutes per game. A Rudy Gobert, Mr. Robinson kind of player. And you've seen in these playoffs, both of those kind of players have been kind of neutered in their roles, unless, you're J.J. Redick and you just don't play center. And I wonder if we really are just going to get to the point now where, now look, there's just dynamic guard play. Like Donovan Mitchell, again, Jalen Brunson, those guys are going to make all NBA teams. Those guys are great offensive players. But they're short. And you wonder, with more and more players obviously playing the game, taller players playing the game, again, more skill coming to the game, you're going to have a lot more guys that are 6'4", 6'5", that can play point guard. Are short guards, are those type of players going to kind of go the way of the dinosaur, the way that a traditional center did? The Roy Hibbert. I'll never forget, like, Roy Hibbert, for those who don't know, was a player for the Indiana Pacers, played most of his career for the Pacers. He was a two-time All-Star. I believe he made 2 All-NBA teams. He was the center on a team for the Pacers that made at least 2 conference finals and lost to the Heat in both times. And then Steph Curry came, and then all of a sudden, in like 3 years, he's out the league. Same thing with like Andrew Bynum. These guys were dominant players, guys that are looked at to be as like the future of the leagues, and then the league just completely changed underneath them. And the way the game just changed made them obsolete. I don't know if we're going to have that type of shift, just because there would have to be so many big guards to come into the league and basically make it impossible for you to hide. And you just seen in the playoffs, a big guard, as someone like Cade Cunningham, was giving the Knicks problems and giving especially Jalen Brunson problems. He was able to figure it out and send those guys to Cancun or East Lansing, whichever one they wanted to go to. But it's going to be a development of how much skill, the more and more skill that you guys have, and the more and more talented players you just have on the court that can do the three things basketball players need to do. They need to be able to dribble, they need to be able to pass, they need to be able to shoot. I just don't necessarily know how much more guys that can't do all three of those things are just going to be allowed to be in the league or actually be able to play. Moving along, I'll go to the Western Conference for talk about their first round series. Right now, we're watching OKC Denver. Not gonna be able to tell you the score of this game by the time this podcast comes out, but it'll be interesting. I don't remember the last time we've had the top two finishers in MVP, which from everything you read, these two guys in Nikola Jokic and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, one of them's going to win MVP, the other one will finish second, have played in a playoff series. On the top of my head, I really can't remember. I don't think it's happened recently. Maybe it was the Steph Curry, Kawhi Leonard one, but Kawhi, one, I don't remember if Kawhi finished second that year, and two, Kawhi got hurt in the playoffs the year that they got to the finals. But no, that couldn't have been the year because that was when Kevin Durant was on the team, and they weren't giving MVPs out to Steph that year. Either way, I don't think this is going to litigate the MVP. People will take it that way because people are idiots. But I do think that this will be a kind of a moment for, again, SGA, because this is another time where, the young stuff, the young team stuff, I don't necessarily think it's over per se, but you're going to get to the point where, again, you might have to start making moves. You're going to have to pay guys like Chet and Jay Williams and all the guys that you have on your bench. Like, you're going to start losing players, and you're only going to have but so many small windows now to be able to win the championship. And this, to me, is his best opportunity to win the championship. Not just his, but Sam Presti. And as much as everyone loves Sam Presti, and I do too, I still think he's the best GM in the league. He's been to one finals, and he hasn't been back since 2011. And his team has basically lost in the second round for the last couple of seasons. Eventually this has got to get it done. Now, again, he's got a great roster. I'm not going to fire Sam Presti. He'll get hired in 6 seconds. But he is a guy who I think oddly needs this to kind of validate who he is, even though I think no one thinks that he's a bad general manager. It's quite the opposite. But that's kind of what it is for that series. Just see if Jokic can keep doing Jokic things and get this team to another conference finals, which would just be really incredible. And the last series that we went to that we just found out got finalized will be Warriors versus the Timberwolves. Interesting subplots how both teams could have drafted the best player on the other team. Infamous me, if you know what I'm trying to say. The Wolves had 2 chances to draft Steph Curry, passed on them both times. And then in the reverse order, the Timberwolves got Anthony Edwards and didn't allow the Warriors to take Anthony Edwards. There was a saying that, like, if Anthony Edwards didn't go 1, they weren't going to draft him. I highly doubt they weren't going to draft him if he was on the table. However, that's what they said. That's what Steve Kerr actually said, reportedly. And now they're going to go up in the playoff series. And like I said before, I think the NBA needs this, and I think NBA needs Ant to take out Steph Curry. The way these things are done, the way these things are handled is the young got to eat the old. Steph Curry, as much as I love him, he's one of my favorite players ever. He's old, and he got to get taken out. And this will be interesting series again for Rudy Gobert because his mortal enemy, he's taking out all his enemies. First it was Luka, now he's got to take out the American in Draymond Green and see how this goes. But nice redemption arc for both Rudy and Julius Randle. Shout out to him for being able to beat the Lakers and now have another opportunity to get to the conference finals, which the Warriors got. Oh, I'm sorry, the Wolves got there last year. I don't think anyone's thought that they might get there again this year. It just proves what kind of special player that Anthony Edwards is, and also that Tim Connelly might know what he's doing as well in the postseason. The other 2 things we talk about is NBA related, but a little bit off the court. We'll talk a little bit about Gregg Popovich. Gregg Popovich, the former head coach of the San Antonio Spurs, winningest coach in NBA history in the regular season. He had a stroke this season and he missed a majority of the season, and just came back that he's retiring. I've never experienced a stroke. I've never had anyone in my family have a stroke. However, I know how devastating those things can be. And if you see Pop, you can see how it's taking its toll on him. I really hope that he recovers and pushes this and beats this and gets back to who he was. It's not just a basketball person. I don't think anyone really cares too much about that. It's just how he was as a human. I will obviously say that I do agree with most of Gregg Popovich's politics. So if you want to ignore what I have to say for the next couple of minutes, that's fine. For Pop to speak out constantly on injustices, I would say sometimes that there are people who say things because they feel like they have to say things in terms of like, if I don't say something, I'm going to get crapped on. Pop just said whatever the fuck he wanted to. And he turned out to be right about a lot of stuff. And the guy seems to be loving and caring. You can see how many players came back just to see him talk. That to me has always been what defines a person. Is not about how much money you made. Pop's made millions of dollars. It's not even about the championships. It's not even the fact that he's in the Hall of Fame, or he's going to be in the Hall of Fame, rather. But it's the fact that so many people seem to care about him as a human. So many people seem to love him and gave him tribute. It's weird because I don't like giving tributes to people who aren't gone. Like, Pop's still here. He's apparently going to be the team president. I hope he's actually going to have that role, and like, it isn't just going to be like a little bit of a figurehead in that space. But he's one of the most important people in the NBA of the last 30 seasons. And he impacted the game so much. He's made the game so much more enjoyable. And even as a kid, I hated watching the Spurs. I thought they were so boring. But you just see how much their influence just affects the NBA. Like someone like Jokic you could just drop that guy in on those San Antonio teams and he would fit like a glove. The ball movement, the passing, everything that they did, that they really kind of enforced was great. And I would argue, to me personally, the best coaching job from one season to another season I've seen any other coach do. The San Antonio Spurs were seconds. They were rolling out the trophy from winning the NBA championship in 2012. Then Ray Allen hit a shot. Heat won overtime. They won the next game. And then that's the thing people forget. They had to win the next game. That was game 6 that happened. They had to win game 7, which the Heat did. And to be that close to a championship and basically have it ripped away from you, and then to come back the next season, play that same Miami Heat team, and like they destroyed them. I believe, I haven't checked this in a while. I don't remember. Maybe Boston. I don't think Boston. No, Boston didn't beat Dallas this bad. But that might have been the greatest disparity as far as point differential in the NBA Finals history. Like, they beat the shit out the Heat. And the Heat won a game, which is the craziest part of that. But yeah, they demolished them. That was the Heat. That was LeBron, Wade, and Bosh, and all those guys. So more life, more blessings to Gregg Popovich. I really hope that he recovers. And, I hope that this role kind of fits in with him. Same, a little bit of same feel in a different kind of way for actual active player. Not in the playoffs anymore. We're talking about Giannis Antetokounmpo. His team has been eliminated for a couple days now. Some people think he's going to the Knicks because he walked around New York City. Hey, newsflash: New York City is the greatest city in the world. A lot of people from a lot of different places come here just to visit. Okay, that could come to the Knicks. Anyway, Giannis has been in trade reports, not because of his doing, but just because people can see the writing on the wall. His team's lost in the first round for a third straight season. They don't really have any picks. They don't have any young players anyone really wants. And they seem to have a very hard ceiling, even though Giannis is still going to finish in the top 5 MVP. I think he'll finish 3rd this year. And a lot of people have places that he wants to go, where he wants to go, and all these other things like that. I'll say this before we get into trade discussion. if Giannis wants to stay and basically say, you know what, I trust the organization. I think that they can be able to build around me even while I'm here. I think that that is fair, and I think that's something that he should want to do. I don't necessarily think that. I don't think the grass is always greener in terms of like chasing a ring. It'd be odd because I don't necessarily think he would be chasing a ring. He already has a ring. But, and I don't think I don't think he'd be wrong if he left. It's just, I think there's something cool to what Kobe and what Dirk did. You know, the more and more I get away from those teams, like Dallas fucking loves that guy. LA loves Kobe. Now, Kobe got a lot more rings than Dirk, but the same thing is that like there were some real dark days with that with the Dallas Mavericks. Like, they were not good for a long time. And I just feel like guys that stay with one team who have tried. This isn't like they've done like bad practice, you know. They got him Drew Holiday, they got him Chris Middleton, they got him Dame Lillard. All these trades that everyone at the time was like, oh, those are great trades, great moves, you know. And sometimes stuff doesn't work, you know. And I just wonder if we are more making Giannis want to leave versus him himself, because I don't think anyone's actually asked what Giannis wants per se. I think that I think it would be so cool if he decides to stay, and I think that overall the NBA would be better if he does stay. I am not someone who's anti-free agency, right? I think free agency is smart. I think free agency is good, and I think free agency allows teams to get better and make sure that there are capitalists in this where the players can get the money. However, we just watched the Detroit Pistons, who, if you're as old as me, you remember when the Detroit Pistons were good, right? You remember Chauncey Billups, Tayshaun Prince, the Wiles brothers. You like remember Rip Hamilton. You know, you remember those teams, right? And those teams meant something to you. But for 20 years, Detroit was terrible, you know, or just like kind of not that good. And then it finally feels like they kind of got it back. And like, you know, Jalen Brunson said during one of his like commentaries, he was like, that place was rocking. And I think the NBA needs that. I think people get it misconstrued where it's like, oh, New York needs to be good for the NBA. LA needs to be good for the NBA. No. You know what was good for the NBA? People who care. People in Detroit love the Pistons. You know why? Because they care. They like the Pistons because the Pistons were good. You know what? They don't give a fuck? The Heat. They don't care about them. All right? They come and go. All right? When they win in, they're there. When they lose in, you know what I'm saying? They ain't really about that. They come to the games like 30 minutes late every single time. So I think that smaller markets and places where, and Milwaukee's not really a small market, but places where guys can go, be there, and again, if he wants to, stay for his whole career, raise his family. Man's got 4 kids now. I'll never forget the story where like he was saying that he just got drafted, but he couldn't afford like a coat or something like that. So he was like running to the arena because it was so cold. It gets brick in Milwaukee. And I guess like some family saw him doing this and stopped and like bought him a coat. He couldn't afford one, you know? And I think that's just like, as much as we all think that like all these things are businesses and then like at the end of the day he might just make a business deal, like this is a person who again became from 18 to now he's 30 years old, 31 years old. That he is a part of Milwaukee, you know? And I just think that it's going to be a tough decision for him to do that. If he decides to leave, I would say that the places that make the most sense, a lot of people say Houston. I think Houston has the most stuff to give. Would I necessarily think Houston would be the title favorite? I don't know about that per se, but I definitely think Houston has a lot of stuff to give. We'll see what happens with OKC. That, to me, would be the team that would make the most sense for him. But, again, if they get to the West Conference Finals or they get to the NBA Finals, they're not going to make that move. Those are probably the 2 teams I have off right now, and obviously the Spurs as well, just because, you know, Wemby, and you're always going to put talent with Wembayama. Like that. All right. Glad we got through this pod. This energy-filled pod. It was crazy. So many things happened. But thank you guys again for listening to the Men Who Cry podcast. Like I said, make sure you subscribe, like, do all those good things, and tell a friend to tell a friend. And I'll be back later this week to give you guys more updates on sports and everything that's moving on. All right. Peace.